I am Martha, a 34-year-old financial analyst who gave 7 years of dedication to Edison Capital Partners in New York City. My reputation as the deal wizard grew steadily until that fateful day when my boss betrayed me without warning. He never imagined that firing me would trigger the collapse of the $150 million deal I had meticulously crafted. Sometimes corporate karma has perfect timing. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in workplace justice and want more stories about standing up to corporate bullies. My journey to Edison Capital Partners began in Chicago, where I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood with parents who worked incredibly hard. My father managed a small accounting firm and would often bring work home, spreading financial statements across our kitchen table. I would sit beside him, fascinated by the columns of numbers that told stories about businesses. "Martha," he would say, "numbers never lie. People might, but the balance sheet always reveals the truth." Those early lessons stuck with me. While other teenagers decorated their rooms with band posters, I had clippings from the Wall Street Journal and financial magazines. My high school friends thought I was strange for reading the business section at breakfast, but I knew exactly what I wanted, a career where analytical thinking mattered. College wasn't easy. Unlike many of my eventual colleagues who attended Ivy League schools with family connections and trust funds, I worked my way through a state university. 3 part-time jobs kept me afloat. Morning shifts at a coffee shop, weekend retail, and late-night data entry for a local business. Between classes and work, I survived on minimal sleep and maximum determination. My economics professor, Dr. Laura Patterson, became my first professional mentor. She recognized my drive and helped me secure an internship at a local investment firm the summer before graduation. That experience, though modest compared to prestigious Wall Street internships, gave me just enough credibility to get my foot in the door. After graduation, I sent my resume to 62 financial firms in New York. 59 rejected me outright. 2 never responded. Edison Capital Partners granted me a 15-minute interview, which I prepared for like it was the opportunity of a lifetime, because it was. The interviewer, a mid-level manager named James, seemed unimpressed with my state school credentials. "We typically hire from top 10 universities," he said dismissively, already standing to end our meeting after just 7 minutes. "Give me 2 months as a junior analyst," I countered, standing my ground. "If I have not proven my value by then, no severance required." Something in my determination must have surprised him. He sat back down. "1 month," he said. That 1 month became 7 years of dedication to Edison Capital. The first year was brutal. The corporate culture was everything you might imagine about Wall Street. Cutthroat, demanding, and often toxic. Junior analysts were expected to work 80-hour weeks, sacrifice weekends, and somehow maintain perfect appearance and demeanor throughout. Many of my colleagues came from wealth and connections. They had attended the right schools, vacationed in the right places, and spoke the right language of privilege. I stuck out with my Midwestern accent and lack of designer clothes. The subtle digs about my background were constant. "Where did you summer as a child, Martha?" they would ask, knowing perfectly well I had never summered anywhere. "Chicago," I would answer honestly. I helped my dad with his accounting clients. My saving grace came in the form of Diane Wilkerson, a senior vice president who had similarly fought her way up from humble beginnings. She found me working alone at 10 p.m. on a Friday, the only junior analyst who had not been invited to a team happy hour. "They will never make it easy for people like us," she said, pulling up a chair. "But that just means when we succeed, we will have actually earned it." Under Diane's guidance, I learned how to navigate the complex world of high-stakes finance. She taught me that deals were more than just numbers on spreadsheets. They were psychological chess matches, relationship-building exercises, and tests of patience all wrapped into one. My first big breakthrough came 18 months into my time at Edison. A potentially lucrative acquisition was about to fall apart because the target company appeared to be overvalued. The senior team was ready to walk away from weeks of work. I had been reviewing the financial statements late one night and noticed something unusual in the footnotes of their intellectual property disclosures. A seemingly minor patent they held had applications far beyond what was being utilized. When properly valued, it changed the entire equation of the deal. When I timidly presented my findings to the deal team, most dismissed me. But Diane insisted they look closer. 3 weeks later, the acquisition closed successfully, with the patent rights alone generating millions in licensing opportunities within the first year. That success earned me recognition from the upper management and my first promotion. More importantly, it taught me to trust my instincts and attention to detail. Over the next few years, I developed a reputation as someone who could spot hidden value or concealed problems that others missed. Jane Lawson and Thomas Wright, fellow analysts who started around the same time I did, became my closest allies. We formed a tight-knit support system in an environment that often pitted colleagues against each other. Jane was brilliant at market analysis, while Thomas had an uncanny ability to predict regulatory changes. Together, we combined our strengths to tackle increasingly complex deals. The Three Musketeers, our colleagues called us, sometimes admiringly, sometimes derisively. By my 5th year at Edison, I had been promoted to senior deal specialist, bypassing several conventional steps on the corporate ladder. My analytical approach, which combined traditional financial metrics with deeper dives into operational realities, became known around the office as the Martha Method. She sees what the rest of us miss, became a common refrain when my name came up in deal discussions. 7 years in, I had personally led or salvaged 34 major deals worth a combined $4 billion in value. My annual reviews consistently placed me in the top 5% of performers company-wide. I had earned the respect of most colleagues and the trust of many clients. My reputation extended beyond Edison, with competitors occasionally attempting to recruit me with substantial salary increases, but loyalty mattered to me. Edison had given me my first real chance, and despite the difficulties, I felt a deep commitment to the company that had allowed me to prove myself. Little did I know that this same loyalty would soon be used against me in ways I could never have imagined. The quantum technologies opportunity landed on my desk on a rainy Tuesday in April. The preliminary briefing described them as a revolutionary tech company seeking strategic investment partnership. Such hyperbole was common in our industry, with every startup claiming to be the next big disruptor. But something about quantum seemed different from the beginning. Founded by Dr. Sarah Lin, a brilliant physicist who had pivoted to entrepreneurship, Quantum had developed proprietary technology that fundamentally changed how quantum computing could be commercialized. While most competitors required extreme cooling environments and massive energy consumption, Quantum had supposedly created a system that operated at room temperature with standard power requirements. If legitimate, their technology would accelerate quantum computing adoption by decades. The potential market impact was enormous, with applications ranging from pharmaceutical development to financial modeling to artificial intelligence. And Edison Capital Partners had the opportunity to be the primary investor with a $150 million stake. This could be the deal of the decade, said Philip Morgan, our chief investment officer, during the initial briefing. And Martha, given your track record with tech valuations, we want you leading the assessment team. This was the biggest opportunity of my career. The investment amount was 3 times larger than anything I had previously led. Success would virtually guarantee my long-awaited promotion to vice president. Failure could set my career back significantly. I threw myself into the due diligence process with unprecedented intensity. My days began at 5:30 in the morning and often ended well after midnight. Jane and Thomas helped when they could, but this was primarily my responsibility. I missed my nephew's birthday, canceled a planned vacation, and saw my apartment only to shower and change clothes for 6 months straight. The complexity of quantum's technology required me to essentially give myself a crash course in quantum physics. I recruited outside experts, bound by strict confidentiality agreements, to help evaluate the technical claims. I built financial models so detailed they required specialized computing power to run simulations. My first meeting with Dr. Sarah Lynn was scheduled for just 30 minutes, but stretched to 4 hours as we delved into the intricacies of both her technology and our potential investment structure. Unlike many founders who oversold and underdelivered, Sarah was methodical, precise, and refreshingly honest about both strengths and challenges. Most investors I meet with understand neither the technology nor its implications, she told me toward the end of our marathon session. You ask questions that matter. That gives me confidence in this potential partnership. Over the following months, Sarah and I developed a strong professional rapport. She appreciated my thoroughness, and I admired her brilliant mind and vision. We spoke nearly every day as I constructed the investment framework that would protect Edison's interests while giving Quantum the capital needed to scale. 3 months into the process, I discovered something concerning. One of Quantum's key technology suppliers was experiencing manufacturing difficulties that could potentially delay product development by 6 to 9 months. This information was not in any of the official documentation, but came to light during a conversation with a supply chain manager during an on-site visit. Most analysts would have flagged this as a major risk factor, potentially even a deal breaker. The standard procedure would have been to either demand a significant discount on our investment or walk away entirely, but I saw it differently. I arranged an emergency meeting with Sarah. I know about the supply chain issue, I said directly, but I think there is a solution that benefits both parties. For the next week, we worked together to develop an alternative component sourcing strategy. I connected her with one of my contacts from a previous deal who specialized in precision manufacturing. Within 2 weeks, we had reconstructed the supply chain with greater reliability and even slightly reduced costs. This creative problem-solving strengthened our working relationship considerably. Sarah began consulting me on business decisions beyond the scope of our investment deal. We were no longer just investor and founder, but genuine strategic partners. As we approached the final stages of negotiation, Sarah made an unusual request. She wanted me personally named as a key person in the contract. What exactly does that mean? I asked during a late dinner meeting. It means you, specifically, not just Edison Capital, would be designated as essential to this partnership, she explained. If you were to leave the company or be removed from overseeing our investment, Quantum would have the right to reevaluate or potentially withdraw from the agreement. Such clauses were not unheard of in our industry, but they typically applied to founders or high-level executives, not to analysts or deal specialists. I was simultaneously flattered and concerned. Is that necessary? I asked. Edison has many capable people who could manage this investment. Sarah was uncharacteristically emphatic. You understand our technology, our vision, and our challenges in a way no one else at Edison does. I am not comfortable having $150 million invested in my company without knowing you will be overseeing that investment. When I brought this clause to my direct supervisor, Vice President Harold Porter, he dismissed it as standard boilerplate that would never be invoked. Harold was in his late 40s, had been at Edison for 15 years, and had the polished demeanor of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. Just include it if it makes the client happy, he said without looking up from his phone. These tech people always think their companies are special snowflakes that need unique treatment. The evening before the deal was set to close, Edison hosted a celebration dinner at La Rivière, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan. The company had spared no expense, with vintage champagne flowing freely and a private dining room overlooking Central Park. I arrived a few minutes late, having stayed behind to finalize some paperwork. When I entered, Harold was in the middle of describing the deal to our CEO and board members. When I first identified Quantum as a potential investment target, he was saying, I immediately recognized the disruptive potential of their technology. I froze in the doorway. Harold had not identified Quantum. I had brought the opportunity to him after a technology conference where I had first met Sarah. In fact, Harold had initially been skeptical, calling it too speculative for our portfolio. Throughout the evening, I watched as Harold and other executives took credit for various aspects of the deal I had structured. My name was mentioned only in passing, as one of many team members who had contributed. Sarah, who had been invited as the guest of honor, seemed to notice the discrepancy. During her toast, she specifically highlighted my contributions. "While I have enjoyed working with everyone at Edison," she said, raising her glass, "I must especially thank Martha, without whom this partnership would not exist. Her exceptional understanding of our technology and business model made all the difference." I saw Harold's smile tighten at the corners. As the evening progressed, he became increasingly cold toward me, barely acknowledging my presence as he worked the room, networking with board members. Later that night, as the dinner was winding down, I overheard a conversation between Harold and Philip Morgan in the hallway outside the restrooms. "The restructuring plan looks solid," Philip was saying. "The board has approved the preliminary outline. We will need to start identifying redundancies next quarter." "I have some thoughts on that already," Harold replied. "Some expensive talent that could be optimized." They noticed me then and abruptly changed the subject. When I asked Harold the next day about the restructuring, he assured me it was just routine efficiency planning and that key deal makers like me had nothing to worry about. "You are essential to our future growth, Martha," he said with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "In fact, I am putting together a recommendation for your promotion package as we speak." I wanted to believe him. After 7 years of dedication and the crowning achievement of the quantum deal, I deserved that promotion to vice president. The future seemed full of promise. I had no idea that behind his reassuring words, Harold Porter was already planning my removal. The official announcement of the quantum technologies deal made headlines in the financial press. Edison Capital Partners stock jumped 12% in a single day, and our CEO appeared on several business news programs touting the visionary investment strategy that had secured this partnership. The internal company memo congratulated the deal team collectively without naming individuals. Still, the successful closing had positioned me perfectly for the vice president promotion that had been dangled before me for the past year. Several senior executives stopped by my desk to offer personal congratulations, and human resources scheduled a career development discussion for the following month. I felt vindicated after years of working twice as hard as my colleagues from more privileged backgrounds. The long hours, missed social events, and relentless pressure had finally paid off. I allowed myself to browse real estate listings for a slightly larger apartment, maybe even with a view of the park, that my anticipated salary increase would make affordable. The first sign that something was wrong came about 2 weeks after the deal closed. Harold began scheduling important meetings when I had other commitments, making it impossible for me to attend. When I raised this with him, he seemed dismissive. "These are just preliminary discussions, Martha. I will keep you in the loop on anything relevant." But the meeting notes I received were suspiciously vague, lacking the substantive details I would need to stay properly informed about our new partnership with Quantum. When I emailed specific questions, the responses were delayed or superficial. Then came the introduction of Kyle Jenkins, a new hire who had apparently joined our team as an investment relationship specialist. Kyle was 31, had an MBA from Wharton, and made frequent mentions of his family connections to banking executives. He also happened to be a regular golf partner of Harold's at their shared country club. "Kyle will be assisting with some aspects of the quantum relationship," Harold explained vaguely when I asked about his role. "Just to lighten your workload." Despite my protest that my workload was manageable, Kyle was given access to all my files on Quantum and invited to calls with their executive team. Increasingly, Harold would send Kyle to meetings with Sarah Lynn rather than me, claiming I was too valuable to be tied up in routine check-ins. When I expressed concerns about being sidelined from a deal I had constructed, Harold dismissed my worries as emotional and not seeing the big picture. "You women always take these things so personally," he said with patronizing patience. "This is just business efficiency. Kyle has a specific skill set that complements the team." That skill set, as far as I could tell, consisted primarily of agreeing with Harold and laughing at his jokes. Kyle had none of the technical knowledge necessary to understand Quantum's technology, nor the financial expertise to properly monitor our investment. But he did have something I lacked, a Y chromosome and connections to upper management. Gradually, More of my responsibilities were transferred to Kyle. First, it was just administrative tasks related to the quantum deal, then oversight of certain technical milestones, and finally direct communication with Sarah Lynn. I was being systematically removed from the relationship I had built, one responsibility at a time. I confided my concerns to Jane during a rare lunch break. Am I being paranoid, or is Harold deliberately pushing me out of the quantum relationship? Jane looked uncomfortable. I should not be telling you this, she said, lowering her voice. But I saw something yesterday. I was helping the documentation team with archiving, and I noticed that all the final quantum investment papers have been modified. Your name has been removed from most of them, with Kyle listed as the lead analyst instead. Ice formed in the pit of my stomach. That is not just unethical. It is a falsification of official records. There is more, Jane continued. Thomas overheard Harold talking with Human Resources about restructuring the deal team. Your name came up. Over the next 2 weeks, I attempted to schedule meetings with Harold to discuss my concerns directly. Each time, his assistant informed me he was too busy. Meanwhile, I was assigned to preliminary work on a much smaller, less prestigious investment opportunity in an industry I had no expertise in, effectively setting me up to fail. Then came that Friday afternoon, at 4:30 p.m., when many colleagues had already left for weekend getaways. I received a terse email asking me to come to the Human Resources Department immediately. When I arrived, Harold was already there, along with Patricia from HR and a company security officer. Please sit down, Martha, Patricia said with practiced neutrality. Harold did not meet my eyes as Patricia explained that due to persistent performance issues and failure to adapt to team restructuring, my position at Edison Capital Partners was being terminated, effective immediately. Performance issues? I repeated in disbelief. I just led the largest deal in company history. The documentation reflects ongoing concerns about your work for the past 6 months, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table. These have been properly documented in your file. I opened the folder to find a series of performance reviews I had never seen before, all highlighting supposed failures and shortcomings that had never once been mentioned to me. The dates had been backdated to create the appearance of a long-term pattern. This is fabricated, I said, my voice shaking with anger and shock. None of these reviews ever happened. They are signed by your supervisor, Patricia replied, pointing to Harold's signature at the bottom of each form. When I turned to Harold, demanding an explanation, his face remained impassive. This is an unfortunate but necessary business decision, Martha. The company is moving in a new direction that requires different skills than what you bring to the table. Different skills? You mean like being friends with the right people? Or having the right gender? My professional composure was cracking under the weight of this betrayal. For a moment, Harold's mask slipped, and I saw a flash of the real reason behind my termination. I had become a threat to his position. My success with the quantum deal had raised my profile too high. In his world, subordinates existed to make him look good, not to shine on their own. I would be careful about making baseless accusations, he said coldly. The financial industry is smaller than you think. No company will hire you now after what I have put in your file. The security officer stepped forward. I need to escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Your access cards and company devices must be surrendered immediately. In a daze, I was marched through the open office, past the shocked faces of colleagues. Some quickly looked away, afraid to be associated with someone who had fallen from grace. Others watched with undisguised curiosity or schadenfreude. Only Jane and Thomas showed genuine distress, Jane wiping away tears as I passed her desk. At my workspace, I was given 15 minutes to pack 7 years of my life into a cardboard box under the watchful eye of security. Family photos, my coffee mug, a few awards I had received, all tossed haphazardly together. My computer had already been locked out, and my email disabled. As I was escorted to the elevator, I caught a glimpse of Kyle moving his things into what had been my office, less than 30 minutes after my termination. This had been planned well in advance. The final humiliation came when I reached the lobby. Rather than allowing me to exit with dignity, the security guard took my box of belongings and informed me they would be mailed to my home address. Company policy, he explained, to prevent terminated employees from taking sensitive materials. I stepped out onto the busy Manhattan sidewalk, suddenly unemployed after 7 years of sacrificing everything for a company that had discarded me like yesterday's trash. The evening crowds flowed around me, everyone rushing somewhere important. While I stood frozen, my entire professional identity stripped away in less than an hour. 7 years of 80-hour weeks. 7 years of missed family gatherings. 7 years of putting the company before my own well-being. All ended with a fabricated performance review and a walk of shame past my colleagues. As the shock began to wear off, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Harold's smug certainty that he had not just fired me, but had ensured no other company would hire me. No company will hire you now after what I have put in your file. He had not just taken my job. He had tried to destroy my entire career. What he did not realize, in his arrogance, was that he had also made a catastrophic mistake. One that would soon come back to haunt him and Edison Capital Partners in ways none of them could imagine. The weekend after my termination passed in a blur of disbelief and rage. Friday night, I sat in my apartment still wearing my work clothes, the reality of what had happened refusing to fully register in my mind. The box of my belongings arrived via courier, further cementing the finality of my dismissal. By Saturday morning, the emotional shock had given way to practical panic. I had a mortgage on my Manhattan apartment that cost nearly $4,000 a month. My student loans, though mostly paid down after years of aggressive payments, still required $800 monthly. I had some savings, but in one of New York's most expensive neighborhoods, even 6 months of unemployment would deplete everything I had set aside. My phone rang around noon. It was Jane, calling from a coffee shop a few blocks from the office. "I cannot believe what they did to you," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Everyone is talking about it. Some people are scared, wondering who will be next." "What reason are they giving people?" I asked. "Harold is telling everyone it was performance-related, but nobody believes it. Not after the quantum deal. Thomas thinks it is because you were getting too much credit, especially from Dr. Lin." Jane went on to share the office gossip. Kyle had indeed moved into my office before my belongings were even packed up. He had also been given oversight of the quantum relationship, despite knowing next to nothing about their technology or business model. "The worst part," Jane added, "is they are rewriting history. In the official announcement about your departure, they minimized your role in the quantum deal, making it sound like you were just one of many analysts who worked on it." After Jane's call, I tried to distract myself with mundane tasks. I updated my resume, though the process felt mechanical and pointless given Harold's threat to blackball me throughout the industry. I made a spreadsheet of my finances, calculating how long I could survive without income. The numbers were not encouraging. Sunday night brought the first of what would become recurring nightmares. In the dream, I was back at Edison, but no one could see or hear me. I was screaming about the injustice while colleagues walked through me as if I were a ghost. I woke up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, and filled with a sense of powerlessness that followed me into the day. Monday morning, I forced myself to begin the job search process. I reached out to contacts at other financial firms, trying to schedule informational interviews or coffee meetings. The responses were telling. People who had eagerly sought my insights just weeks earlier suddenly had completely booked schedules or were traveling indefinitely. By Wednesday, the pattern was unmistakable. Harold had made good on his threat. Somehow, he had poisoned the well, spreading his fabricated story about my performance throughout the industry. 7 years of exemplary work erased by whispered lies and falsified documents. The panic attacks started that night. Sitting on my couch, I suddenly could not breathe. My heart raced, and a crushing weight pressed on my chest. The room spun around me as I gasped for air, convinced I was having a heart attack. The emergency room doctor explained it was just anxiety, as if that made the physical symptoms any less terrifying. "This is a common reaction to sudden job loss," he said, prescribing anti-anxiety medication I was reluctant to take, especially in high-pressure industries. Your identity becomes so wrapped up in your work that losing your job feels like losing yourself. He was right. Without my position at Edison, who was I? For 7 years, being a financial analyst had defined me. It had consumed my time, shaped my relationships, and determined my self-worth. Now that identity had been ripped away, leaving a void I did not know how to fill. Thomas called on Thursday with more inside information. Kyle is completely out of his depth with quantum. He asked me what quantum computing actually does. The guy managing a $150 million investment in quantum technology does not understand what quantum computing is. Has anyone spoken with Dr. Lin? I asked, wondering how Sarah was reacting to the sudden change in her Edison contact. That is the strange part, Thomas said. Harold has been intercepting all communication with quantum. Everything has to go through him now. The weekend marked 1 week since my termination. I forced myself to meet with a therapist, specializing in career transitions, a step my practical self knew was necessary, even as my emotional self resisted the idea that I needed help. What you are experiencing is a form of grief, Dr. Reynolds explained during our first session. You have lost something significant, and the circumstances were traumatic. Add to that the betrayal by someone you trusted professionally, and it is no wonder you are struggling. We talked about developing an identity separate from work, about finding value in myself beyond my career achievements. The concepts made intellectual sense, but emotionally they felt as foreign as quantum physics had when I first encountered it. As the initial shock began to fade, a slow, burning anger took its place. In the quiet hours of the night, I found myself reviewing every interaction with Harold over the past year, looking for signs I had missed. The delayed meetings, the subtle undermining, the gradual isolation from key relationships, all now appeared as obvious steps in a calculated plan. To channel this frustration productively, I began reviewing the quantum deal in detail. Though I no longer had access to the official Edison documents, I had kept personal notes throughout the process, along with early drafts of key agreements that I had worked on from home. Late one night, unable to sleep, I spread these materials across my living room floor, creating a timeline of the deal's development. Something about the key person clause kept nagging at me. Sarah had been unusually insistent about its inclusion, yet Harold had dismissed it as meaningless boilerplate. I found my notes from that conversation with Sarah over dinner. It means you specifically, not just Edison Capital, would be designated as essential to this partnership. If you were to leave the company or be removed from overseeing our investment, Quantum would have the right to reevaluate or potentially withdraw from the agreement. The implications suddenly hit me with stunning clarity. If I was named as a key person in the final agreement, my termination might constitute a material breach of contract. Quantum could potentially walk away from the deal entirely, but surely Harold would have checked this before firing me. He was arrogant but not stupid, unless he did not know. The final documents had been prepared by the legal team based on terms I had negotiated. If Harold had been as dismissive of the clause with legal as he had been with me, they might have included it without emphasizing its significance. With trembling hands, I dug through my files until I found a draft that included the key person provisions. There it was, in Section 14.3. Martha Wilson is hereby designated as a key person for purposes of this agreement. Her continued involvement in an oversight capacity for this investment is deemed material to the execution and ongoing viability of this partnership. The language was clear and unambiguous. By firing me, Edison might have inadvertently triggered a clause that could nullify the entire investment agreement. I sat back on my heels, mind racing. This information was potentially explosive. If Quantum chose to invoke this clause, Edison could lose the biggest deal in company history. The stock price would plummet. Harold, and possibly others, would likely lose their jobs. The ripple effects would be enormous. Part of me, the wounded part still raw from betrayal, felt a surge of vindictive pleasure at the thought. Let them suffer as I had suffered. Let Harold experience the same professional humiliation he had inflicted on me. But another part hesitated. Such an outcome would affect not just Harold, but hundreds of innocent employees at Edison. It would impact investors who had nothing to do with my termination. And what about Quantum? Their technology deserved the capital investment to reach its full potential. The ethical implications were complex. Did I have a responsibility to alert someone at Edison to this potential catastrophe? Or did I owe them nothing after how they had treated me? Should I contact Sarah directly? What were the legal ramifications of any action I might take? As dawn broke over the Manhattan skyline, I realized I needed advice from someone with perspective I lacked, and I knew exactly who to call. Diane Wilkerson had retired from Edison Capital Partners 2 years earlier, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most respected senior executives in the company's history. Unlike many who disappeared into comfortable retirement obscurity, she had maintained connections with a select network of former colleagues, myself included. We met for lunch every few months, and she had become something of a personal mentor beyond the professional guidance she had provided during our years working together. I called her early Monday morning, 2 weeks after my termination. Diane, I need your advice on something complicated. Can we meet? 3 hours later, we sat at a quiet table in the back of a small restaurant in Brooklyn, far from the financial district where we might be recognized. I had brought copies of my notes and the draft agreements containing the key person clause. Diane listened without interruption as I explained everything. The Quantum deal, my sudden termination, Harold's threats, and finally, my discovery about the potential contract violation. When I finished, she sat in silence for nearly a full minute, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. First, let me say how deeply sorry I am about what happened to you. It is disgraceful and unfortunately all too common in this industry. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. Now, about this contract clause. You realize this is significant leverage. That is why I needed your perspective, I admitted. Part of me wants to watch Edison burn for what they did to me. But that feels petty and unprofessional. Diane nodded thoughtfully. Let us think about this strategically rather than emotionally. What are your goals here, Martha? Not your feelings, your actual objectives. I considered the question carefully. I want to protect my professional reputation. I want to ensure I can work in this industry again. I want some acknowledgement that what happened to me was wrong. I paused. And if I am being completely honest, I want Harold to face consequences for his actions. All reasonable, Diane confirmed. Now, let us talk about the ethical and legal dimensions of your options. Over the next 2 hours, we dissected every aspect of the situation. Diane, with her decades of experience, raised considerations I had not thought of. She explained the potential legal implications of different courses of action, from doing nothing to actively notifying Quantum about the breach. Before you make any decisions, she advised, you need more information. First, you should consult with an attorney who specializes in employment law and financial contracts. Second, you should find out if Quantum already knows about your termination and how they feel about it. How do I do that without creating more problems? I asked. Dr. Lin reached out to you directly many times during the deal process, did she not? It would be perfectly normal for you to inform a close business contact about your change in employment status. Following Diane's advice, I scheduled a consultation with Eleanor Jeffries, an attorney known for her work representing financial executives in employment disputes. Her office on Park Avenue projected exactly the kind of understated power I needed in my corner. They have exposed themselves to significant liability, Eleanor stated after reviewing my documentation. The fabricated performance reviews alone constitute potential fraud. Add in the gender discrimination angle and the contract breach, and Edison has a serious problem on their hands. What are my options? I asked. You could file a wrongful termination lawsuit, though those are lengthy and often Pyrrhic victories at best. You could negotiate a substantial severance package in exchange for your silence about the key person clause. Or, she paused, evaluating me carefully, you could take a more strategic approach that addresses your actual goals rather than just seeking compensation. I am listening. Eleanor outlined a multi-pronged strategy that would protect my interests while maintaining my professional integrity. First, we document everything factually. No emotional language, no accusations, just the timeline and the facts. Second, we prepare a letter for Quantum that simply informs them of your departure from Edison without suggesting any particular action. Third, we draft a separate letter to Edison's board of directors detailing the factual discrepancies in your termination process. Will that not just antagonize them further? The key is in the framing and the timing, Eleanor explained. This is not about threats or leverage. It is about creating a documented record of facts that protects you from further damage to your reputation. With Eleanor's guidance, I spent the next 3 days preparing these documents. Each word was carefully chosen, each claim backed by documentation. The letter to Quantum simply informed them of my unexpected departure from Edison and provided my contact information should they have any questions about the transition of the account I had managed. The more difficult task was reaching out to Sarah Lynn without appearing to be deliberately sabotaging Edison. After much consideration, I decided a direct but neutral approach was best. I emailed her from my personal account. Dear Sarah, I wanted to let you know that I am no longer with Edison Capital Partners as of 2 weeks ago. It has been a privilege working with you on bringing Quantum's revolutionary technology to market, and I wish you continued success. If you have any questions about the transition that I might be able to help with, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sarah's response came within hours, asking if we could speak by phone. During our conversation, she expressed shock at my departure and dissatisfaction with the transition. Kyle knows nothing about our technology or business model, she said frankly, and Harold keeps rescheduling our check-in calls. This is not the partnership I thought I was entering into. I maintained professional neutrality, careful not to disparage Edison or suggest any particular course of action. I understand this transition must be challenging. I am sure Edison is working to get the right resources in place. Martha, Sarah said after a pause, you know there was a reason I insisted on the key person clause. Your understanding of both the financial and technical aspects of our business was unique. That clause was not just legal boilerplate to me. I appreciate that, Sarah, I replied carefully. Any decisions about how to proceed are entirely yours and Quantum's board to make. I simply wanted you to hear about my departure directly from me. After speaking with Sarah, I faced an internal ethical debate that kept me awake for several nights. Was I manipulating events by ensuring Quantum knew about the contract breach? Or was I simply providing factual information they had a right to know? Where was the line between justified self-protection and vindictive retaliation? I scheduled another session with Dr. Reynolds, my therapist, to work through these questions. There is a difference between seeking justice and seeking revenge, she pointed out. Justice restores balance and acknowledges wrong. Revenge aims to inflict pain. Which are you pursuing? Her question helped me clarify my own motivations. I did not want to destroy Edison or even Harold personally. I wanted recognition of the wrong that had been done, protection of my professional reputation, and yes, some measure of accountability for those who had acted unethically. With this clarity, I finalized my strategy with Eleanor. We would send the factual letter to Edison's board the following Monday, giving them a chance to address the situation internally before any external consequences manifested. The letter would not mention Quantum's key person clause directly, but would establish the timeline of events that might become relevant if Quantum chose to act. You are not responsible for Quantum's business decisions, Eleanor reminded me. You are simply ensuring there is a clear record of facts. Over the weekend, I gathered all my documentation, organized chronologically and thematically. I had emails, meeting notes, draft contracts, performance evaluations from before Harold's fabricated ones, and contemporaneous notes I had taken throughout the deal process. Together, they told a clear story of my contributions, the successful deal completion, and the sudden, unjustified termination. On Sunday evening, I received an unexpected text from Thomas. Emergency meetings scheduled for tomorrow morning. Something big happening with Quantum. Will update when I can. My heart raced as I realized events were already in motion, possibly before my carefully planned response could be implemented. Had Quantum already raised concerns about the key person clause? Was Edison scrambling to address a problem they had only just discovered? I called Eleanor immediately to update her on this development. This changes our timing, she agreed. We should deliver our letter to the board today, electronically, rather than waiting until tomorrow. They need to have our factual account before they start making crisis decisions. Within an hour, the letter was sent to each board member individually. It detailed my history with the company, my role in the Quantum deal, the circumstances of my termination, including the fabricated performance reviews, and Harold's explicit threat to blackball me in the industry. The letter concluded, I am providing this information to ensure the board has a complete and accurate understanding of recent events that may have significant implications for Edison Capital Partners. I remain committed to the highest standards of professional conduct and would be willing to discuss this matter further should the board wish to do so. Then I waited, knowing that the next day would likely determine not just the fate of the Quantum deal, but the future direction of my career and professional reputation as well. Whatever happened next, I had done everything I could to stand up for myself while maintaining my integrity. The rest was out of my hands. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of calm. After weeks of emotional turmoil, I had taken every reasonable step to protect myself. Now events would unfold according to their own momentum. At 9:30, I received a text from Jane. Complete chaos here. Quantum representatives arrived unannounced with their legal team. Everyone in crisis mode. I had not expected such immediate action from Quantum. Sarah must have taken my information directly to her board over the weekend, prompting this swift response. Part of me wanted to be a fly on the wall in those meetings, but another part was grateful for the distance. I had done what was necessary to protect my reputation. I did not need to witness the fallout firsthand. Throughout the morning, updates trickled in from Jane and Thomas, painting a picture of mounting panic at Edison. The executive floor was in lockdown. The legal department had ordered emergency printing of the full Quantum contract documents. Harold was seen pacing in his office, tie loosened, face flushed with anger or fear. At 11:15, Thomas called rather than texted. You will not believe what is happening, he said in a hushed voice. Quantum's legal team and board members are in the main conference room with our executives and lawyers. They specifically asked for the complete personnel file for a key person named in their contract. When legal brought it in, their lead attorney read through your termination documentation and looked physically ill. What is Edison's response? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Harold is trying to convince them that you were a minor contributor who can easily be replaced by Kyle. But Sarah Lynn interrupted him mid-sentence to read aloud from emails where he praised your work as essential to the deal. She had printed copies of everything. The confrontation I had imagined in abstract terms was happening in vivid reality. My careful documentation had been one thing, but I had not anticipated that Sarah would have her own evidence of my role in the deal. Just after noon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. When I answered, I was surprised to hear the voice of William Pearson, Edison's general counsel. Miss Wilson, he began formally, I hope this call finds you well. I am reaching out regarding a situation that has developed with Quantum Technologies. Their representatives have raised concerns about your recent departure from Edison Capital Partners, specifically in relation to certain contractual provisions. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. The board has reviewed your letter from yesterday evening and would like to discuss the circumstances of your termination in more detail. Would you be available to join us at our offices this afternoon, say at 3 p.m.? Your legal counsel would be welcome to accompany you, of course. I will need to check my attorney's availability, I replied, matching his formal tone. May I ask who else will be present at this meeting? The executive committee of the board, myself, and representatives from Quantum who have specifically requested your participation in discussions regarding the ongoing viability of our partnership agreement. After confirming Eleanor could accompany me, I agreed to the meeting. We spent the next 2 hours preparing, reviewing key documents, and discussing potential scenarios. Remember, Eleanor advised as we rode the elevator up to Edison's offices, you are not coming as a supplicant or even as a former employee seeking redress. You are coming as a key person in a $150 million deal who was wrongfully removed. That is a position of considerable strength. Walking back into the Edison building felt surreal. The security guard recognized me, but had clearly been instructed to provide a visitor badge rather than stopping me. As we were escorted to the conference room, I caught glimpses of former colleagues watching with undisguised curiosity. The large conference room was arranged with two facing tables. On one side sat the Edison contingent, 3 board members, including the chairman, William Pearson, the CEO, and Harold, looking distinctly uncomfortable. On the other side were Sarah Lynn, 2 Quantum board members, and their legal counsel. 2 empty seats waited for Eleanor and me. Miss Wilson, thank you for joining us, began Edison's chairman, Douglas Reynolds. We have been discussing a matter of significant importance to both our companies. Sarah Lynn spoke next. Martha, I was shocked to learn of your departure, particularly given your central role in developing our partnership. When I received your email and subsequently spoke with you, I felt obligated to review our agreement with Edison in light of the key person clause we had insisted upon. William Pearson cleared his throat. For clarity, we are discussing Section 14.3 of the investment agreement, which designates Miss Wilson as a key person whose continued involvement was deemed material to the partnership. He placed a copy of the contract on the table, open to the relevant section. During our review this morning, Quantum's representatives expressed concern that your termination potentially constitutes a material breach of the agreement, giving them grounds to withdraw from the partnership and reclaim their capital investment. All eyes turned to Harold, whose face had gone pale. He had clearly not been aware of the clause's significance when he orchestrated my removal. This is a simple misunderstanding, Harold attempted, his usual confidence notably absent. While Martha was certainly one of many valuable team members on this deal, Kyle Jenkins has all the necessary qualifications to manage this investment going forward. The spirit of our agreement remains intact. Sarah's response was measured but firm. With all due respect, Mr. Porter, that is not accurate. We specifically named Martha because of her unique understanding of both our technology and business model. We have had 3 meetings with Mr. Jenkins since Martha's departure, and he was unable to answer basic questions about our product architecture and market strategy. One of Quantum's board members, a sharp-featured woman in her 60s, added, "This is not a minor contract detail we are nitpicking. This goes to the heart of why we chose Edison as an investment partner. We selected you largely because of the specific expertise and approach that Martha demonstrated throughout our negotiations." The Edison board members exchanged concerned glances. The financial implications were clearly sinking in. $150 million, the largest deal in company history, was on the verge of collapse. Douglas Reynolds turned to me. Miss Wilson, we have reviewed your letter to the board detailing the circumstances of your termination. If accurate, the situation is deeply troubling. We would like to hear directly from you about these events. With Eleanor's subtle nod of encouragement, I calmly recounted the sequence of events, from the successful completion of the Quantum deal to my unexpected termination. I referenced specific documents, emails, and witnesses that could corroborate each point. I described the fabricated performance reviews and Harold's explicit threat to prevent me from finding employment elsewhere in the industry. Throughout my account, I maintained professional composure, focusing on facts rather than emotions. When I mentioned Harold's statement that no company will hire you now after what I put in your file, several board members visibly winced. Harold attempted to interject several times, but Douglas silenced him with a raised hand. You will have your opportunity to respond, Harold. When I finished, William Pearson asked, Do you have copies of the performance reviews you allege were fabricated? Eleanor produced a folder containing my previous stellar reviews alongside the sudden negative reviews that appeared in my termination documents. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Harold finally had his chance to speak. His defense was a combination of deflection and minimization. This was a standard restructuring decision. Martha's role had become redundant with our new strategic direction. The documentation may have been handled imperfectly, but the business decision was sound. And your statement that no company would hire Miss Wilson because of what you put in her file? Douglas asked pointedly. A misunderstanding. Heat of the moment. I never intended to prevent her from finding new employment. Sarah Lynn had been watching this exchange with growing impatience. While Edison sorts out its internal issues, Quantum must consider its position. Our board has authorized me to invoke Section 14.3 unless a satisfactory resolution can be found immediately. We cannot remain in a partnership where our specifically designated key person has been removed under questionable circumstances. The tension in the room was palpable. $150 million and Edison's reputation in the investment community hung in the balance. After a hushed conversation among the Edison board members, Douglas turned to me. Miss Wilson, in light of these circumstances, Edison would like to offer you reinstatement to your position, with a promotion to vice president and oversight of the quantum relationship, effective immediately. Additionally, we would provide appropriate compensation for the disruption of the past few weeks. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see a message from Diane Wilkerson. Meridian Partners wants to meet you tomorrow. Senior VP position. They know everything and do not care what Harold said. A sense of calm certainty washed over me. Just weeks ago, this offer from Edison would have been everything I wanted. Now, it felt like too little, too late. I appreciate the offer, I replied, but I must decline. I have already accepted a position with another firm. This was not strictly true yet, but I had absolute confidence in Diane's message. My concern at this point is ensuring that my professional reputation is restored and that the false information in my personnel file is corrected. Harold looked stunned. He had clearly expected me to jump at the chance to return, perhaps with some groveling gratitude thrown in. That is disappointing to hear, Douglas said. Is there anything that might change your mind? My decision is final, I stated firmly. However, I have no desire to see Edison or Quantum harmed by this situation. If it would be helpful, I would be willing to consult during a transition period to ensure the continuity of the partnership, provided my new employment terms permit such an arrangement. Sarah brightened at this suggestion. That would address our immediate concerns about the key person provision, at least temporarily. The meeting continued for another hour, as the details of this arrangement were negotiated. Eleanor ensured that the agreement included a full retraction of the fabricated performance reviews, a neutral reference for future employment inquiries, and a non-disparagement clause binding Edison and its employees. As for Harold, his fate was sealed, though not explicitly discussed in my presence. The glances exchanged between the board members made it clear that he would face serious consequences for jeopardizing such a significant deal. When we finally left the building, Eleanor gave my shoulder a congratulatory squeeze. That could not have gone better if we had scripted it. You maintained the high ground throughout. The next morning, financial news outlets reported that Edison Capital Partners had experienced unexpected volatility following concerns about a major investment partnership. The stock dropped 8% before stabilizing. By afternoon, a terse press release announced Harold Porter's resignation to pursue other opportunities. 3 days later, I accepted the senior vice president position at Meridian Partners, with a compensation package 40% higher than what I had been earning at Edison. My first assignment would be to develop their strategy for technology investments with a focus on quantum computing applications. Jane called to congratulate me and share the aftermath at Edison. Kyle has been reassigned to a minor account management role. Thomas is being considered for a promotion. And get this. They found out Harold had done similar things to at least 2 other female analysts before you. The board has ordered a full review of all terminations in the past 5 years. And the quantum deal? I asked. still intact, but significantly restructured. Your consulting arrangement gave them time to convince Quantum to stay. But Edison's reputation has taken a serious hit. Several other clients are reviewing their relationships with the firm. As I prepared for my fresh start at Meridian, I reflected on the whirlwind of the past month. I had gone from the depths of professional despair to an opportunity greater than I had ever anticipated. All because I had stood up for myself with integrity and strategic thinking rather than burning bridges in anger. Harold's threat that no company will hire you now had not only failed but had backfired spectacularly on him. In trying to diminish me, he had ultimately diminished himself and damaged the company he had tried to protect from my influence. Sometimes, I realized, the best revenge is not vengeance at all, but simply ensuring that the truth comes to light. 6 months into my new role at Meridian Partners, I stood at the window of my corner office overlooking Central Park. The autumn leaves created a tapestry of red and gold against the green, a visual reminder of how much can change in a single season. My transition to Meridian had been remarkably smooth. Unlike the cutthroat culture at Edison, Meridian operated on a model of collaborative excellence. Performance was still rigorously measured, but success was viewed as a team achievement rather than a zero-sum competition. My first major initiative had been to establish a specialized division focused on emerging technology investments, with quantum computing as our initial priority. Drawing on my experience with quantum technologies, I developed a framework for evaluating not just the financial metrics, but also the human factors that contribute to successful partnerships. The fallout from the Edison situation had rippled through the financial industry in unexpected ways. The publicity surrounding the near collapse of the quantum deal had prompted several investment firms to review their key person provisions and employee termination procedures. 2 major companies had discovered similar vulnerabilities in their own contracts and quietly reversed termination decisions before they could trigger comparable crises. Harold Porter had not found another position at a major investment firm. According to industry gossip, his reputation had been irreparably damaged when the full story leaked to key players in the financial community. Last I heard, he was trying to establish his own boutique advisory firm with limited success. Edison Capital Partners had undergone significant internal changes. An external review of their personnel practices had uncovered a pattern of discrimination that went beyond my case. 3 board members had resigned, and a new chief diversity officer position had been created with actual authority to implement changes. Jane had reached out a month ago to tell me she was being considered for a vice president position at Edison, part of their effort to promote more women into leadership roles. Thomas had already been promoted and was thriving in his new responsibilities. Perhaps the most unexpected development came in the form of an elegant envelope that arrived at my office one morning. Inside was an invitation to lunch from Sarah Lynn. We met at a quiet restaurant near her company's headquarters. "I have a proposition for you," she said after we had caught up on recent events. "Quantum is expanding our executive team as we prepare for commercial rollout of our technology. We need someone who understands both the financial and technical aspects of our business, someone who has demonstrated integrity even under extreme pressure." "Are you offering me a job?" I asked, surprised. "Chief Strategy Officer, reporting directly to me. You would have equity in the company and a seat at the table as we reshape an entire industry." She slid a folder across the table. "The details are all there, but I wanted to make the offer in person. Your insight into our business during the Edison negotiations showed me you understand quantum's potential better than most financial professionals." I promised to consider her offer seriously, though I was genuinely happy at Meridian. The fact that I had options, that my professional value was recognized by multiple organizations, felt like the final vindication after Harold's attempt to destroy my career. That evening, sitting on my apartment balcony with a glass of wine, I reflected on everything I had learned through this ordeal. The painful experience had taught me lessons about business, relationships, and myself that no degree or training program could have provided. I had learned that professional value is not determined by one company or one person's opinion. Harold had believed he could define my worth with fabricated documents and threats. he had been catastrophically wrong. I had learned the importance of documentation and maintaining copies of my work. The evidence I had preserved had been crucial in establishing the truth when my character was under attack. I had learned to recognize the warning signs of a toxic work environment. The subtle exclusion from meetings, the gradual transfer of responsibilities, the unexplained changes in attitude from leadership, all should have alerted me sooner to the danger I faced. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned that standing up for yourself does not require sacrificing your integrity or professionalism. In my darkest moments, I had been tempted to lash out, to seek revenge rather than justice. By choosing the higher path, I had not only protected my reputation, but had created opportunities I could never have anticipated. The irony was not lost on me that Harold's attempt to destroy my career had ultimately led to its advancement. By forcing me out of a comfortable but ultimately limiting position, he had inadvertently pushed me toward greater success and fulfillment. I thought of the younger analysts at Meridian who now came to me for advice and mentorship. I made sure to share not just technical knowledge, but also guidance on navigating office politics, documenting achievements, and recognizing when loyalty to a company was being exploited rather than rewarded. Never tie your entire identity to your job, I told one particularly driven young woman who reminded me of myself 7 years ago. Build your expertise, document your successes, and remember that your value exists independently of any one company's recognition of it. The experience had changed how I approached my work and my life. I no longer sacrificed everything for professional advancement. I had reconnected with family and friends who had taken a back seat during my Edison years. I had developed interests and relationships outside of finance, creating a more balanced and resilient sense of self. The betrayal I had experienced at Edison would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for growth and self-discovery that might never have happened otherwise. As the sun set over the Manhattan skyline, I realized I had found something more valuable than professional success. The knowledge that my worth was not determined by a title or a company, but by my skills, my integrity, and my willingness to stand up for what was right. Sometimes losing everything professionally is how you find your authentic voice. And sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. Because when people do not see your full value coming, they never prepare for the power of your truth. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for yourself felt risky, but turned out to be the best decision you ever made? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences about navigating professional challenges with integrity. Hit that like button if you believe in workplace justice, and share this video with anyone who might be struggling with unfair treatment at work. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, your value is not determined by one person or one company. It is determined by you.